The Candid Frame is supported by donations by listeners just like you. Help us to bring you great conversations with great photographers. Support the show today with your monthly contribution through our Patreon effort at patreon.com/The Candid Frame, or click on the link in the show notes or the website at thecandidframe.com. Thank you.
This is Underground-nyc, and this is The Candid Frame. Before we begin, I want to share that I'll be in San Antonio, Texas, attending 4x5 Photo Fest on November 18th. I'll be conducting 2 live interviews with local photographers. It's a great event, not only for San Antonio photographers, but anyone with a serious passion for photography. You can find out more by visiting 4x5photofest.com. That's 4x5photofest.com. And I'll also be attending this year's Miami Street Photography Festival on December 7th through the 10th, where I'll be conducting a masterclass on street photography. The event showcases some legendary street photographers, which you don't want to miss. To find out more and to register for my class, visit MiamiStreetPhotographyFestival.org. Regardless of how long you've been listening to this show, you have undoubtedly considered the idea of being your own boss. Whether you're actually doing that now or just dreaming about the idea, you've heard hundreds of photographers share their own stories of how they've gotten there. Though the fantasy of being your own boss is a wonderful place to daydream, it's always making the choice to put in the time and do the work that makes such dreams a reality. Paul Friedman always knew that he wanted to be his own boss, which led him to a career as a photographer, but also eventually resulted in him starting Lens Pro To Go, an online camera equipment rental service that has enjoyed great success over the past 10 years. What's fascinating about his story is that he didn't wait until he thought he was completely ready to take on the challenge of building on a new and untested business model. He dove in, and despite some admitted mistakes, can lay claim to making one of his dreams come true. Well, Paul, welcome to The Candid Frame. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the show.
Thanks, Underground-nyc. Great to be here.
Yours is a sort of an interesting story, and one of the things I sort of picked up on is that having your own business was always sort of a big goal for you to have. And I thought we would start there as to why that was so important to you.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I can't really tell you why it was so important to me. I can tell you that, perhaps ever since college, it's just been my goal to have my own thing and just to run things the way I want to run a business. And my goals in the end were not to have like even a really big company, but just to run things the way I thought that they should run. And if it was a customer focused company that it ended up being, which it did, is, I just wanted to have a company where I could treat people, our customers, the way I would want to be treated as a customer. And it's, in the end, it's not really terribly difficult to do that. And yet so few companies actually do treat their customers really great. So
it wasn't born of some experiences you had, like working for someone else or something you witnessed in terms of your parents' work history?
Yeah, no, it did. It did. I graduated college. I eventually went to business school. I worked for a lot of different companies, both large and small, in various analytical kind of capacities. And I worked for some really good companies. I worked for some really not so good companies. And I certainly saw both the good and the bad at different companies, things that they were really good at, things they weren't good at. Of course, anyone who's experienced, both large and small companies have experienced company politics, which I despised. And, I used to work for a large, well-respected company here in the Boston area. And I worked there for a few years. It was about 3 years or so. And it was a really good experience. And they treat their people really well. A lot of people stay there for a very long time. For me personally, I'm grateful for the experience, but I also knew in being there, that's like, I just don't want to be here for the next 25 years. This is not what I want to be doing with my life. And I used to look at people at the time when I was there, I was in my early 30s. And I used to look at people like in their, mid 50s or so. They've been there for 25 or 30 years. They have a good job. They get treated well. And I used to look at them and be like, I just don't want to be that guy. I want to go out and do my own thing. And it certainly wasn't about the money, because I didn't have any, terribly grand ambitions about what a company would be. I just wanted to be in charge of my life. Yeah. I just wanted to, I didn't want to be at the whim of whatever company or whatever manager I happened to be working for at the time. I just wanted to be in charge of my own destiny, running a small company the way I thought it should be run. I think with any kind of entrepreneur, there's a little bit of arrogance there, in saying like, hey, I see what other companies are doing and I can do it better. So, I had a little bit of that arrogance, because you have to have a little bit to think that you can go out and strike out on your own and think that you can do things better than they're currently being done. And certainly that was the case with me. But when I eventually started Lens Pro to Go, I mean, the whole goal was, treat your customers really great. My philosophy that I, try to teach everyone here is that treating your customers is good for business, or being good to your customers is good for business, and being great to your customers is great for business. And really, in the end, it takes so very little incremental effort to make your customers feel wonderful and appreciated, and it's so relatively easy to create customers for life. But so few companies make that extra effort to treat their customers great.
One of the things that piques my interest, though, is that there are a lot of people who aspire to be their own boss, to have a living, especially amongst photographers.
Yeah.
But not everyone is able to do that. And, you just spelled out that you had a really clear vision in terms of what you wanted to create, in terms of the relationship between the customer and yourself and your business. But I'm wondering,
right,
was it that vision alone that helped you to be able to push through the myriad of obstacles that you no doubt faced in trying to create first a business as a photographer and eventually Lens Pro to Go?
Yeah, right. No, definitely it takes, a lot more than just the vision. And I'll be the first to admit that it certainly takes a good deal of luck. I think any successful business is around it doing, sometimes a small part, sometimes a large part to luck. And that was definitely the case with me. When I started, I mean, my only true goal, and at the time I was shooting as well, so I had my corporate job, which I couldn't wait to get out of. I had started a photography business, and I was doing, starting to do pretty decent with it. This is like in the 05, 06 timeframe. So shooting weddings and events and portraits and, everything like that, and started Lens Pro to Go. Really my only goal was to cobble together a living with both the photography and the lens renting business on the side as well. The rental business grew so quickly, so large so quickly, that I didn't expect that. But it was certainly due in small part to being at the right place at the right time in our little niche of an industry here of renting gear online, because it was so new and no one really knew what it was. The vision that I had in terms of the way we shipped and presented gear to people, the customer interactions, I was able to carry out. But there was a lot of luck in there too, for sure. Absolutely.
Do you think there was an advantage into being at sort of the inception of this sort of business in this industry, as opposed to becoming a photographer, which has this legacy and, this sort of baggage? Did not having something to compare yourself to, was that helpful?
Right. Yes, definitely. I think in any industry, if you're able to get into the ground floor of any kind of industry, you already have a little bit of a leg up. And especially if you can create a good reputation for your business in our own little the greater industry of photography, which I was in, of course. If you can create that great reputation in the early goings, that's going to help tremendously too. But yeah, there was no blueprint for creating this kind of a company. It didn't exist a few years before we started. So we were kind of creating, and I say we, I mean me and my other counterparts who started a similar lens rental kind of a company at the same, roughly the same time. No one had a blueprint for that. So we were all just kind of carving our way and making mistakes along the way and figuring things out. A lot of things that we did then we wouldn't do now, or we do much differently now. So it was sort of a pioneer sort of an atmosphere at the time.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to note, because so many people sort of keep themselves from doing it because they feel like, well, I don't know enough.
Yeah,
I don't have enough experience doing it. And you in your business are a wonderful example of, even though you didn't know everything that you needed to know when you started,
right,
you nevertheless were able to meet whatever challenges, whatever crises, whatever things that you had to learn in order to make it happen. So tell me about how, in the midst of all of that, you're able to sort of persist and not get to the point where you're overwhelmed by everything just sort of collapses onto itself.
Oh, I was overwhelmed. Yeah, that is a great question. So I knew that I didn't know everything. And in fact, I knew that I knew very little about going in to this space. I think I was because I always wanted to have my own business, I was very, very prepared for a risk. I was prepared to not know. And I do know that it takes a certain kind of person to be able to say that and be okay with that. Even now, as we hire people now, 11 years after we started, I tell people, like, you have to be comfortable with at least a little bit of ambiguity, because we don't have an employee manual to tell you exactly what to do and how to do everything. We like to hire intelligent people who can make their own decisions about things after they collect enough information. There isn't a black and white way to do things. And I've always been very comfortable with that level of ambiguity, and that, the whole business at the time was ambiguous. We had no idea. In fact, I remember the website went up, and miraculously a couple of days later, had our first order, and I looked at him like, well, now what? I don't know how to ship this stuff. I don't even know what to do. And so there was a lot of trial and error there. And, and if I had waited till I had tried to, perfect the things that I was doing, or try things out and do things until it was right, I could have been many, many months perhaps behind other competitors who were also getting into the industry at the time. So I was just very comfortable with not knowing what to do, and being comfortable with saying, well, I'm just going to have to figure it out as we go along. And God knows there were a lot of mistakes along the way, but I, tried to make things better quickly.
Can you give me an example of a mistake that you made, that you learned something from, that was really critical to the success of your business?
Gosh, how much time do you have? Yeah, well, I can tell, I can tell you one where I was, I'm not proud about this, but in the early going, when we had, it was certainly within the first year, and we, every piece of gear mattered so much because we just didn't have that much stuff. And, a woman had placed an order for, I forget what it was, and we didn't have many, and we were getting wiped out clean of gear because business was so brisk. And at the very last minute, she canceled the order, and then I had been turning customers away, and I got a little upset at her, and that was not cool. I shouldn't have done that. That was a terrible thing to do. Granted, that never ever happened again, but I felt bad about that. There's been lots of instances. I'm trying to think of others where we've done things that we wouldn't do now or we would have done differently. Maybe something will come to me. I can't think of anything right now, but in terms of taking reservations in the very beginning, it wasn't something that it was me. I wasn't very good at it until I built a system to map that out a little bit better.
But I think it's an important point it can't be stressed enough that you're going to make mistakes. When you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're the whole company to start with, or even when you have just a modest number of employees to begin with, is that mistakes are inevitable. And I think people are very phobic about making any mistakes because they think it's going to cost them everything. Yeah,
you're right. You're totally right about that. And I tell all my coworkers here now, like we, certainly in the beginning, in the early stages, we made lots of mistakes. And I tell people, I say, you can't be afraid to make mistakes. Like if you do something that, perhaps that, we would have made a different decision than what you did. As long as you have a good reason for doing it, it's okay. You can't be afraid to make mistakes. We've certainly, we've spent lots of money on different marketing efforts or whatever it may be that, in the end just was perhaps, in hindsight, silly and a waste of money. But it's like, okay, all right, we tried this, it didn't work. We tried that, it didn't work. There's lots of things that we're doing now, either from a marketing or, that we have done in the past, marketing or technology, or, things that we're doing with gear or packing or shipping that, in hindsight, that didn't make a lot of sense. But okay, we learned, we moved on, and we're getting better because of it. I never want any of my coworkers here to feel like they can't take any risks for fear of being skewered for making a mistake. Because that is like the death of progress right there. If people are afraid to do something different, then we're not going to grow ever as a company, and we're not going to get better. And that's a horrible place to be.
Your business seems to have it was a right idea at the right time, and it was something that was shared by others who started similar businesses. But what was it about 10 years ago that made it ripe for this idea to thrive?
Yeah. Good. Also, good question. Certainly, the proliferation of digital SLR photography at the time, which was just booming and booming. I'm sure you remember at the time things were just so new and exciting and different. People were making massive transitions, either from film SLRs or even just people who were photography buffs but had never really shot DSLR. And now they're buying digital SLRs, which were just exploding at the time. There was also, and a lot of these people, myself included at the time, didn't really know a lot about lenses and expensive lenses. And people, if you do know about lenses, you can't afford everything that you want. So you want to try different lenses to see if you want to buy it, or you just need a different kind of lens for whatever event it is that you're shooting. And I personally spoke to all of our customers at the time within, in the first couple of years. And there were lots of people out there who were just like, they would call up in the beginning to place an order, and they're asking about lenses, and I'm talking to them because I was a shooter myself, so I could talk the talk. And I'm like, no, this is they tell me what they were trying to accomplish in the event that they were shooting. I'm like, okay, this is the lens that you want. Try it. I think you're really going to love it. And it's a Canon L lens. It's really great. And they've never shot with an L lens. And then they call me up a week or so later and they're like, oh my gosh, you were right. That was amazing. And now I get why that lens is $1,500 and it's way better than a $300 lens. And a lot of that can't be experienced until you're actually doing it yourself. Getting back to your question, the other part of it was, as the proliferation of DSLR photography and photography in general was growing, of course, the economy, 07, 08, all the way up to 10 or beyond was, in shambles. Many people lost their jobs, of course, and then as a result, a lot of people just started shooting on the side just to try and get something. So there were so many weekend warriors out there, photographers who were new to shooting professionally. Even if they didn't charge a lot, they needed to shoot. They wanted to shoot with good gear, and so they rented a lot of gear because they didn't have a lot of money to go out and buy their own anyways, and they weren't charging a lot for for whatever weddings or event there was. So there was a lot of people, new to photography, new to the industry because, sadly they had gotten laid off. There was a lot of that back then.
So, you said you were shooting professionally. At what point did you realize that was going to have to, go by the wayside and you had to dedicate yourself completely to lens protocol?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact. I'd say it was probably about a year after I started. I think I started Lens Pro To Go in like end of August of 2006. And, it was certainly slow at first, of course. By the summer of 2007, I was still building up my photography business and was doing well. And at the time, Lens Pro To Go was in my house. I was the only person. No one really knew that at the time. I used to always use we pronouns and I pronouns. There was no we. I was literally taking every order, speaking to every customer, writing every email, packing every box, unpacking every box, cleaning every piece of gear. By the summer of 2007, it was, a fairly significant volume for one person to do all of that. And on top of that, I was also shooting a lot. And I remember by the end of the summer, I was I was thrilled and happy. And, that was truly one of the happiest times of my life. But I was also exhausted and I knew I had to stop shooting around then. So it was right about then, I think, that I really stopped taking photography jobs.
And when you started it, you'd already had 2 of your kids?
I have 3 kids. I have 3 daughters.
3 daughters, okay.
And yeah, they at the time in 2006, they were all in elementary school at that point.
Okay, so talk to me about that. I mean, like you said, you're taking a risk. You're launching out into unfamiliar territory, and you got 3 daughters to raise.
Yeah.
So that's always a big consideration for anyone who's trying to transition from one career into another. So, not only financially, but in terms of just the time that you have to dedicate to the business as opposed to your family.
Yeah. And certainly having a family, a young family, was a huge amount of motivation for me to succeed because I had to provide. My wife did work at the time and still does, but I was the main breadwinner. I had a good job, and the last thing I wanted to do was to fail and then have to go back to the corporate world. That was my biggest fear. I knew I would be able to make a living. I just didn't want to do it back in having a job in corporate America. So the motivation to succeed with Lens Pro To Go was really, really, really high. I worked a lot. I worked all the time, and it was great. I don't regret any of that for a minute. Certainly there were times when I couldn't participate in family stuff, but, for the most part, I was there. I was around, and I don't recommend jumping off the cliff like that in such a way for someone who has a family, unless you're ready to fail and then go back to get a job. I mean, but I was ready to do that. It wouldn't be the right decision for everybody, but I was ready to do that, and thank goodness I did.
So what did you learn from your customers that really helped you make your business as effective as it is? Yeah,
well, I did always want that awesome service company. I wanted people to walk away with them saying, "My gosh, that was so great." Actually, no, I take that back. I wanted to deliver it. I didn't think I would get the kind of feedback that I did. I wanted to just give them an awesome experience. What I didn't realize was how appreciative so many people would be about it. because and I got the feedback via either phone calls or emails, and certainly because we're renting gear, we're shipping it out, it comes back to us. We used to and still do to this day. We get love notes back. I call them love notes. That might be just a thank you card, a handwritten thank you card in there, or maybe it includes a picture of what they used the gear for. So people were really, really appreciative of this great service, and that was certainly a lot of confirmation that it was worth the time and the effort to provide that really great service, because people love it and they're so shocked by it. Which is sad to say, that they're shocked. Even I'm sure you've had plenty of occasions yourself where you're receiving great service and maybe you feel like it's coming out of nowhere, and what a great thing that is, right?
Yeah. So what is the service? What are the qualities that you bring in terms of customer service? What are specific things that you guys do differently from, say, your competitors that create that dynamic?
Yeah. Sure. Well, I can say what we do now isn't necessarily all that we were able to do back in the early days. I can say now that we have, for one, we have a really great and easy and thorough website. At the time, we didn't. Of course, most websites back then weren't that great. Certainly ours fit that category. But now we have a really great website. We want everything to be upfront and clear, easy and respectful and fun at the same time. We want all of our email communications to be, of that same transparency and clearness and, a little bit of character and humor in there. We want all of our interactions with people on the phone. Actually, before I get to that, I'll talk about the packaging. Even from day one, we've shipped almost all of our gear in Pelican cases, which not only makes the gear really safe in getting to and from the customer, but it's a great presentation for the customer. And then when the customer is packing the gear back up, they have a great peace of mind that's going to get back to us in good shape because it's in this awesome Pelican case that has this great foam in there, and a truck could run over the Pelican case and nothing's going to happen to it. So it's all those things. But I think the main thing that perhaps differentiates us from our competitors is that when you call us and you need some help, either you just need some help in placing the order, or you actually have questions about photography or filmmaking or the kind of gear that you should be using, the phone is always answered by someone who is either a professional photographer or filmmaker and can actually help you with that. It's wonderful to have a friendly voice on the phone who will do, help you in whatever situation you're in, but it's another to be automatically in touch with someone who can give you great photography advice. Yeah. And that's what we do.
Well, one of the things that you guys offer, which makes you very unique, is this Equip program.
Yes.
Tell us about that and how that all came about.
Sure. So like all the other companies in the industry, we have a bit of a following out there, and so we get people reach out to us all the time. It started to really accumulate. People will reach out to us and say, "Hey, I've got this project coming up, or I'm shooting for, I'm a student, or I'm shooting for my religious organization, or I'm working for a charitable organization, or I'm working for this group around this certain cause, whether it be environmental cause or whatever kind of charitable cause it would be. And hey, Lens Pro to Go, can you help us a little bit with some gear perhaps for this project that we have for, that we're not making any money on?" And we would get these literally, we still get these every day. So what I wanted to create was, and we can't help everybody, of course, we can't give free gear out to everyone who asks for it, even though I wish we could. But so I wanted to create a program and a vehicle by which people could apply and say, so he's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're looking for some help. Well, here's the link to the EQUIP program. And what the EQUIP program is, it's going to ask you on the website, it's a series of questions, tell us a little bit about the project that you're going to be working on, who's going to benefit by it, what does, the endpoint look like, what does success look like for you, and we get all these submissions, and then we're able to look at all these in a little bit more objective manner and say, like, okay, let's give this particular shooter or this organization, we're going to provide them with, say, $1,000 gear credit to so that they can get the gear in order to shoot whatever it is that they need for that charitable organization. So it's a great vehicle for us to be able to award people for the good things that they're doing in the world, because there's a lot of people out there trying to do some good in the world, and we can play a small part in that. I can't help everyone, but we can play a small part in that for some, and that's what the EQUIP program is.
So can you tell me some of the projects or organizations that you've helped with that through the program?
Yeah, I could tell you. My memory is terrible, and it's unbelievable. But yeah, I could tell we helped one young man with his project at a Chicago public high school. There, we've helped some other folks on their environmental projects, not just in the U.S. but around the world, and those kinds of things. When they're trying to raise awareness about different environmental calamities that are happening, we certainly like to participate in projects like that, and we've done a couple of those. But we get some really interesting submissions, and we're trying to divide up our gear credits among a whole wide range of different kinds of charitable organizations.
That must be a challenge, especially as you said, since you get these kind of requests all the time. So do you guys have a committee of people who will sit down and go through all the applications? How does that work?
We do. It's a small committee. It's just about 3 people who look at the different submissions, and we try to look at things that might jump out at us and say, oh, that looks really, really interesting, and certainly the way the submissions are written affects it. If we can tell people are serious, and that was part of the impetus around EQUIP, is that it's easy for you to for anyone to fire off an email to LensPro to go saying, hey, I'm doing this thing, can I get some free gear? But it's another thing to really answer all the questions that we have and put them in a cohesive and clear manner that says that, yes, we're doing this and we're really serious about it, and here's a little bit about the organization, and here's what we're going to be doing with the final product, whether it's photography or video, whatever it may be. And here are some other organizations we're working with to promote the film. It does help if people are really, really thorough about what they're doing, how they're presenting it to us. And it's easier for us to look at something like that and say, wow, they got their act together. Let's see if we can help them out.
In the last 10 years, the photographic industry has changed dramatically.
Right.
The incorporation of motion capture, video, mirrorless cameras, so all these different things, camera phones. But from your perspective, what have been some of the changes that you've noted specifically, and how have those sort of influenced or changed your business?
I think in a lot of ways, the world now is less about the gear and more about the story, and what is it about the story that you're going to convey. I mean, it's one thing to take beautiful imagery, whether it's still or motion photography, video, and whatnot. The gear is, there's some amazing gear out there, really, really wonderful, and certainly all of our smartphones have gotten much, much better at shooting both photography and stills, but professional gear can still do so much more for you in terms of creating, a professional piece of either photography or video. But I think we've gotten a little bit more towards saying like, okay, well, what are we trying to communicate to people? What is the story we're trying to convey? And I think that's what people are focusing on a little bit more now, which is really nice to see, because it turns the art into much more of a communicative piece rather than just something beautiful. And that's not to say that you can't just go and create something beautiful, but I think we're using the art and the medium to really trying to communicate our points of view or whatever it may be out there to help further a cause or whatever it is. But people are getting really good at that and using the tools that we have available to do that.
Yeah. How do you find out about your clients beyond simply the gear that they choose to rent? Because knowing who your clients are really is essential to you being able to not just serve them immediately in the current time, but also being able to anticipate what's going to be happening like 6 months or a year from now.
That part is actually fairly easy for us because we're talking to our clients all the time, every day. And so, nothing happens in that regard overnight. It just happens gradually. And gradually might be over the course of 6 or 12 months. But, as we're talking to our customers, we start to notice trends and see things that they're looking for, requesting the kinds of projects that they're working on, the kinds of gear that they need. And, as we've, grown from a very small company, and we're still a small company, but from a tiny company into a larger company now, we've been able to carry more and more gear as our customers have also gotten more and more sophisticated. And so we listen to them, when they hear like, okay, yeah, you're carrying this, but I really need the next step up now. If we start hearing that a lot, then we're going to start carrying that kind of gear to accommodate their needs. So that part is, we don't have to reach very far because we're speaking to our customers every day.
Yeah. With a business, you're always trying to sort of keep up with your own growth, not like overstep it where, you're all of a sudden, spending much more money than you actually need to, but also you don't want the business to sort of get out of control either.
Right.
So that's a completely different lesson. I mean, success breeds its own complications.
Yes.
So talk to me about that aspect in terms of you having to sort of learn and adapt with, the success of the business.
Yeah, and that's been hard. That's really difficult. We always want to try and meet the demands of our customers, either in the volumes of the gear or the kinds of different gear. But we've never been the kind of company to just say, well, yeah, let's just carry everything because our customers seem to want that. Because we're shooters ourselves, we only carry gear that we truly believe in, that we want to shoot with ourselves. And if we're not carrying a specific kind of piece of gear, maybe for a particular reason, we're going to tell our customers that. Like, we're not going to carry, 10 different pieces of similar lighting or monitors or whatever the case may be, because we're going to carry these two brands because they're really great and we really believe in them, and if you, depending on your project, that's the exact piece that you need. So we've certainly trying to answer your question right, but I think keeping yourself from expanding too wide on a product range is important, because the money tree is not limitless. We can't just buy everything we actually want to buy, but we want to be able to meet our customers' needs. So focusing on just the products that we truly believe in ourselves has helped us to meet our customers' needs without having to expand too wide in a product sense. We've certainly made mistakes before of overcasting for certain products that we thought were going to do well and then did not, so we have to change our product mix and sell gear perhaps that we were, not planning on selling quite yet. So that can hurt. There's lots of mistakes that we make along the ways. Certainly not spending money on things that, are truly not going to generate money. I know I've personally been guilty of that, and spending money in different areas of advertising or marketing that we thought were going to work, but end up like, gosh, it really, really doesn't. So it's hard. Again, there's been no blueprint for that. And I just think keeping your wits about you, your humility about you is a good thing.
So how has all this that you've created impacted your relationship to photography?
Oh, gosh. Wow. No one's ever asked me that before. While I don't shoot professionally, I still love photography, and that will always be the case. I hope that someday I can actually create a little bit of my own halfway decent photography again. I love seeing what our customers can do, and we have, truly some really, really talented people, certainly on both the photography and the filmmaking end. And occasionally customers will reach out to us, say, hey, check this out or see what I'm doing here. And sometimes I'll look, it's like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. That is just some amazing work. And it's really inspiring to see. So, because of the company that I have here in the industry that I'm in, I get exposed to a lot of amazing and inspiring pieces of work that I'm sure I wouldn't otherwise be exposed to, and for that I'm really grateful. It's amazing to see some talented people out there, to see what they can do. Makes me feel inadequate as a photographer myself, but that's okay. It gives me something to shoot for.
That's the way I feel about this show.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Thank you. Well, my last question that I ask each guest is I ask them to recommend one photographer for our listeners to discover and explore. And it can be anyone, someone they've long admired or someone they've recently discovered. So who would that one photographer be and why?
I would say that one young guy just recently reached out to me. He is he's on Instagram actually, and he's a Nikon shooter. Offhand, I can't remember exactly what his Instagram handle is. It's something like Underground-nyc. He's doing some really, really great work that I really enjoy watching. Looking at his work. I don't know. He certainly shoots. It's a lot of people in various places throughout New York City, and I really love the work. It's really great. It's inspiring to see.
Well, you can get it to me, and I'll include his Instagram tag in the show notes so people can look it up and check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll shoot you the link over for sure. Well, and sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you so much. I really enjoyed having the chance to talk with you and learn so much about the business and the story behind it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Varun. It's really great to be on the show with you, and you asked some really, really great questions, and thanks for making me feel comfortable.
Thanks to Paul for sharing his time and his story with us, and to demonstrate his support for the work that we do here at TCF, he's offering our listeners 10% off any order that you place through LensPro to Go. Just use the promo code CandidFrame10 at checkout when visiting lensprotogo.com. And thank you for your continued support of the Candid Frame. If you haven't already, please take the time today to write a review in the iTunes Store. Your ratings and comments help people to discover the great conversations we offer here at TCF. You can also support the show by making a monthly contribution through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/thecandidframe, or you'll find a link in the show notes and the Candid Frame website. Or if you just want to make a one-time contribution to the show, you can do so via PayPal by clicking on the donate button on the Candid Frame website or the show notes. Thanks to Epstein Michael for their recent contribution. Much appreciated. To access our complete archive of interviews, download the free Candid Frame app, available for Apple iOS and Android. Not only will you immediately receive the latest episode on your phone or tablet, but you can now easily share your favorite episodes on your social networks and help spread the word. And if you want to drop me a line with comments or suggestions for the show, you can email me directly from the app. Download it today by clicking on the link in the show notes or the website at thecandidframe.com. The Candid Frame's audio engineer is Martin Taylor. You can find at theothermartintaylor.com. The show's senior producer is Cynthia Parker, and our music is from Kevin MacLeod, whose royalty-free music can be found at incompetech.com. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at simply at Ibarian X. And this is Ibarian X, and this is The Candid Frame.